हेलो दोस्तों, बिगिनर्स पॉइंट में आपका स्वागत है। और अभी हम कर रहे हैं चैप्टर 2। ठीक है, इससे पहले चैप्टर 1 कर लिया, नहीं देखा तो पहले की वीडियो में जाकर देख सकते हैं। अंडरस्टैंडिंग द वेदर। अ चेंज इन द वेदर इज सफिशिएंट टू क्रिएट द होप एंड वन सेल्फ अ न्यू। मार्सेल प्रोस्ट, फ्रेंच novelist. Weather and its element. You wake up one winter morning and shiver. You reach for thick clothes to keep yourself warm. In the summer, you choose clothes that keep you cool and comfortable. You are responding to your body's signals. Your body is sensing the weather. What is weather? Weather is a state of the Earth's atmosphere at a particular time and place. But what is an atmosphere? In simple terms, it is the layer of gases that surround some planets. In the case of our Earth, we call these gases air. The Earth's atmosphere may be compared to a cake with several layers. ये क्या हो जाएगा? ट्रोपोस्फेयर, इसके बाद ये आ जाएगा ट्रोपोपॉज, फिर ओजोन लेयर और उसके बाद स्ट्रेटोस्फेयर. The layer closest to the surface of the earth is called troposphere, and that is where all land-based plants and animals, including humans, live and breathe. It is also where almost all weather phenomena, which we will explore in this chapter, take place. The troposphere extends to a height of 6 to 18 kilometers from the ground. It is less thick at the poles, where the cold air contracts, and thicker in the tropical zone, where the warmer air expands. You will study more about the other layers in your science classes. We use many words to describe the weather: hot, cold, rainy, cloudy, humid, snowy, windy, and so on. They describe the different ways in which we experience the elements of weather. The elements of weather are temperature, how hot or cold the atmosphere is. Sleet matlab frozen or partly frozen rain. Precipitation, any form of water such as rain, snow, sleet, or hail that falls from the sky. Atmospheric pressure, the weight of the air above us felt on the earth's surface. Wind, the movement of air including its speed and direction. Humidity, the amount of water vapor in the air. Hail matlab small hard balls of ice that fall from the sky like rain. Water vapor is water in gaseous instead of liquid form. As you can see, it would be difficult for Krishnan to convey his sense of chilliness to Ahmed unless there is a commonly agreed way to measure the temperature. It is the same with other elements of weather. In this chapter, we will learn how we measure the weather using common standards. From early times, humans have closely observed nature and learned to read her signals to forecast the weather. Observing birds flying low, ants frying eggs, squirrels gathering nuts, frogs croaking loudly, or even the opening and closing of pine cones provide valuable information about coming rain or storm. This knowledge has been passed down from generation to generation. Forecast to predict or find out in advance, in our case, the weather. Even today, in many parts of India, people use traditional ways to predict the weather, especially the arrival of the monsoon. Observing nature's clues. Ants shifting their eggs to higher ground in a natural behavior that indicates an expected change in the weather, especially heavy rain. A frog croaking in a forest of the Western Ghats in expectations of rain. Meteorology is the systematic study of weather and its evolution. This study is the basis for weather forecasting. The opening and closing of pine cones are natural mechanisms driven by environmental humidity. Pine cones close in humid conditions to protect their seeds and open in dry conditions to release them, ensuring they spread in favorable weather. In the last few centuries, scientists have worked out methods to measure and monitor the elements of the weather with great precision. Based on those inputs, meteorologists try to predict how the weather will behave in a particular region after a few hours or a few days or even a few weeks. How do they do it? Do they just look up at the sky and guess? No. They have got some cool gadgets, a few of which we will now look at. Weather instruments, temperatures. Snow melts quickly when it warms. Cloudy weather, it's getting cold. In winter, coconut oil turns solid. Curd takes longer to set in cold weather. Ambient of the immediate surroundings. There are several types of thermometers. Some simply measures the ambient temperature, others record the maximum and minimum temperature during a day. Thermometers often use a colored liquid which expands when the temperature increases. However, more and more digital thermometers are preferred as they are more precise and can record more data. Statistics, the technique of gathering and analyzing information or data in order to be able to detect patterns, understand events, or make predictions. Indeed, temperature recordings can be used to collect some useful statistics, including range of temperature or the maximum temperature minus the minimum temperature during a particular period of time, usually 24 hours. Mean daily temperature or the maximum temperature plus the minimum temperature of the day divided by 2. The Indian Meteorological Department was set up in 1875. Its motto is Aditya Jayate Vristi, which means from the sun arise rain. The phrase comes from the ancient text Manu Smriti, and the complete sentence reads from the sun arise rain, from rain comes food, and from food living beings originate. Can you think of a reason why rain arises from the sun? 28 to 2025 maximum temperature in degrees Celsius, 29 degrees Celsius, minimum temperature 16 degrees Celsius. 1 3 2025 30 15 31 17 33 32 18 43 30 17 53 28 14 63 29 or 15. Perception. If the news says that a particular place received 30 of rainfall in a day, what does it mean? How is rainfall measured? इधर हो जाएगा collecting fuel, measuring scale और measuring tube. The amount of rainfall is measured with the help of an instrument and called a rain gauge. With it rains, the water falls into a funnel and is collected in a cylinder. A scale is attached to the cylinder to measure the depth of rainwater collected. For example, when the height of the water collected in 5 we say that the area received 5 of rainfall. Atmospheric pressure. Our bodies are quite aware of temperature and rainfall, but you may also have experienced that the weather sometimes feels heavy as before has thunderstorm. This is related to atmospheric pressure, which is pressure exerted by the weight of the air above and around us. The atmospheric pressure is higher near the sea coast and lower as we go higher up into the mountains. When you climb a mountain, the air gets thinner than in the plain below. As a result, the air pressure is lower and there is less oxygen available for lower pressure, cooler air, higher pressure, warmer air. Your lungs to take in with less oxygen getting into your blood, your body has to work harder to keep you moving. That's why people sometimes feel breathless, dizzy, or tired at high altitudes. This does not mean that the atmospheric pressure is always high in the plain below or on the coast. In fact, it sometimes drops dramatically, resulting in what meteorologists call a depression or low pressure system, which can sometimes develop into a storm or a even cyclone. The instrument used to measure atmospheric pressure is called a barometer. As with thermometers, there are several types of barometers. The unit they display is generally the millibar. The normal atmospheric pressure at the sea coast is around 1013 MB, a pressure below 1000 MB indicates a depression. Acclimatize, adjust to a new climate or new conditions. Wind is the movement of air from areas of high pressure to areas of low pressure. Speed and direction are two important factors when we describe the wind. Have you seen seeds like these flying in the wind? What would happen to the seeds if there was no wind? The wind is an important element of the weather. Its direction and speed help in weather forecasting. Besides, air pilots and sailors need to be aware of wind data, as the wind has a great influence on flying or sailing. Farmers are also use the wind direction to predict where rain might come from. Also, a greater wind speed will cause the soil to dry faster. So how do we measure this direction and speed? A wind vane or weather vane has a rotating arm with a frontier at one end and a tail at the other. When the wind blows, the tail is pulsed and the frontier turns in the direction of the wind. It responds even to a light breeze. Wind vane on the tramac, right? An anemometer. This wind vane on the tarmac is called windsock. It gives pilots an indication of the direction of the wind during takeoff and landing. Similar socks are used in industries that release ash or gases. The simplest instrument to measure the wind direction and speed in the anemometer. It has 3 or 4 metal cups that rotate a vertical shaft when the wind blows. The stronger the wind, the faster the rotation. A meter attached at the bottom counts how many times the anemometer spins in a certain period of time and calculate the wind speed in kilometers per hour. Humidity is the last element of the weather on our list. It refers to the amount of water vapor present in the air. It also depends on factors like temperature, wind, pressure, and location. We can answer these questions more precisely by learning how to measure humidity. Before we move forward, we need to remember our science lesson from grade 6 about the states of water. This will help us to understand how humidity is measured. Humidity of the air is measured as a relative humidity. Air that would contain absolutely no water vapor, which is impossible in nature conditions, is rated at 0%, while air saturated with water vapor will have a humidity of 100%. In practice, dry weather has a relative humidity range between 20% and 40%, while humid weather usually falls between 60% and 80% relative humidity. But how we measure such numbers? This is done through an instrument called hygrometer. Again, there are several types of hygrometers depending on the principle they are based on. The measurement of humidity is of great importance in many industrial processes such as food processing. Museum also monitor humidity as they need to maintain a dry environment to preserve their exhibit. Weather stations. As you can see, we need several instruments to measure the weather at a particular place and time. A weather station brings all these instruments together, making it easy to measure and track the weather. Readings of all the measurements are taken at regular intervals, which helps in mapping and forecasting the weather. And automated weather stations. An automated weather station (AWS) is a self-operating system that uses various sensors to measure and record weather data, temperature, humidity, and wind speed and direction, precipitation, and atmospheric pressure. Such stations are widely used in fields like agriculture, aviation, navigation, environmental monitoring, and so on, providing accurate and timely weather information without the need for human intervention. In 2023, the National Disaster Management Authority set up an AWS at a glacial lake of Sikkim at an altitude of more than 4,800 meters above sea level. The AWS provides early information about upcoming weather conditions. AWS at a glacial lake of Sikkim. Predicting the weather. Meteorologists collect data using these instruments over long periods of time. They study the data and use scientific methods to try and predict the weather. Such predictions are very important nowadays as climate change makes extreme weather such as droughts, floods, cyclones, etc. more frequent. ये हो जाएगा फॉग, फिर यहाँ पे आ जाएगा हैवी रेन, वेरी हैवी रेन, एक्सट्रीमली हैवी रेन, हैवी स्नो, हेल स्टॉर्म, डस्ट स्टॉर्म, यहाँ पर ये सब बना हुआ है. फिर हीट वेव, कोल्ड डे, ग्राउंड फॉल्ट, फर्स्ट स्ट्रॉन्ग सरफेस विंड्स, थंडर एंड लाइटिंग, हॉट एंड ह्यूमिड. इधर नो वार्मिंग, वॉच, बी अपडेटेड, अलर्ट, बी प्रिपेयर्ड, वार्निंग, टेक एक्शन. Accurate predictions help us to be ready for such events. They also enable local governments to mobilize resources and prepare for any disaster. For example, if stormy weather is expected at sea, fishermen are warned about venturing out in their boats, or an entire coastal area might have to be evacuated if a cyclone is expected. Look carefully at the map of India above. This map was issued by the Indian Meteorological Department on 19 May 2024. Study the icons and connect them to the conditions shown on the map. Before we move on, temperature, humidity, precipitation, wind and atmospheric pressure together define the weather at a particular place. The condition of these elements is measured using spatial instrument. Data collected from these help us to monitor and predict the weather. In different times or situations, one of the element is dominant. For example, rainfall in July, the temperature in May and December, atmospheric pressure when a cyclone is moving, and wind when are low. Strong, hot and dusty winds that blow in North India in summers is blowing, or forest fires are spreading. Weather is closely linked to climate. We will discuss this in the next chapter. और इसी के साथ ये चैप्टर भी हो जाता है